Sonic the Hedgehog 2 remains, to this day, one of the fan-favorite installments in the Sonic series. It sold a shit ton of copies when it was released back in 1992, and it continues to be popular on digital download services and with emulation enthusiasts. With 2 successful releases under their belt, it was clear that Sega had something special on their hands. Not one to be kept waiting, Sonic blasted his way back onto store shelves a year later in 1993's Sonic the Hedgehog CD. Boy, remember when sequels to blockbuster games could come out within a year of their predecessors? That feels like forever ago, but Sonic CD is a bit of a special case in that regard. As I prefaced in the previous video, Sonic 2 and Sonic CD were actually developed at the same time, with the former being produced by Yuji Naka in the United States located Sega Technical Institute, and the latter being produced by Naoto Oshima at Sega of Japan. As the 2 projects progressed, they gradually diverged into 2 very different games, with Sonic 2 focusing its development on the native Genesis hardware, and Sonic CD being optimized for Sega's fancy new Mega CD add-on. Without going into too much detail about it, the Mega CD, or Sega CD if you live in North America, was released in Japan in 1992, and allowed the Genesis to take advantage of compact disc technology, added internal RAM, and also advanced the graphical capabilities of the native Genesis hardware. Despite its impressive technical capabilities for its time, the Sega CD didn't do especially well. For one thing, it commanded a hefty price tag, $300 US. That's about $500 in 2014 dollars. It also didn't help too much that Sega quickly dropped support for the system to focus on the development of the Sega 32X and the Sega Saturn. In the end, the Sega CD only sold about 3 million units. Nowhere close to the number of Genesis systems sold. That being said, the Sega CD library does contain quite a few excellent gems if you can stomach the astronomical prices of both the unit and the games themselves. There's the Lunar RPGs, the Musha sequel Robo-Alest, yes Ethan, I'm pronouncing it right this time, an enhanced port of Potful Mail, the best version of Earthworm Jim 1, the only stateside release of Hideo Kojima's Snatcher, and of course, Sonic the Hedgehog CD. As you might imagine, given the Sega CD's mediocre performance, Sonic CD didn't come anywhere close to equaling Sonic 2's sales figures. But among those fortunate enough to have played it before it was ported to the Sonic Gems collection in 2004, or to iOS and Android in 2011, Sonic CD was often heralded as one of the best installments in the series. Some even consider it better than Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. For a Sonic game, that's pretty high praise. So, what do I think of Sonic CD? And how does the much lauded 2011 iOS Android remake stack up in comparison? Let's find out. The plot is considerably more complicated than the previous 2 games. While on his usual high-speed antics, Sonic makes a pit stop at Neverlake, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious little planet, which is said to appear over Sonic's world once a year. Upon arriving, Sonic discovers that Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik has beat him to it, having entirely encased Little Planet in a metal shell and tethering it to Mobius's surface. You've gotta love the Doctor's narcissism. The bastard carved his face into a mountainside. Why? Because he could. Appalled, Sonic quickly makes his way onto Little Planet's surface. While there, yet another robotic version of Sonic, called Metal Sonic, shows up and kidnaps a pink hedgehog named Amy Rose. Yes, that Amy Rose. Sonic sets off to take out Metal Sonic, rescue Amy, and reclaim Little Planet from the clutches of Dr. Robotnik. In general, I think the story in Sonic CD works pretty well. It keeps things simple and straightforward while offering something different from last time around. It's also worth mentioning that the game includes a couple of pre-rendered FMV cutscenes produced by Toei Animations and Studio Junio. The cutscenes themselves are actually pretty cool, and the animation is exceptionally well done. The original FMVs, on the other hand, not great. I mean, the Sega CD wasn't exactly the pinnacle of technology or anything, so my expectations weren't especially high, but I still think these cutscenes look a hell of a lot better in the iOS Android version, where they actually take up the whole screen and utilize a broader color palette. It's a small improvement, but still something that the remake does better. Getting on the characters introduced in this game, Metal Sonic is one of the most popular villains in the whole series. Hell, he even became a Dragon Ascendant in one of the later games in the series. Personally, I don't really see what the big deal is. He doesn't have any interesting abilities or an identifiable personality, so I find it hard to see why he's so popular. It must be the kick-ass boss theme. As for Amy, she's kind of a subversion of the damsel in distress trope. In the first zone, you come across her in the middle pathway towards the end of the level, where she instantly falls in love with Sonic. And Sonic's not down with that. For someone someone as adventurous and fun-loving as Sonic, the idea of settling down with a woman isn't exactly his cup of tea. So when Amy gets kidnapped by Metal Sonic, Sonic doesn't go to rescue her out of love, but because he doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. And ironically, this playing hard to get only makes Amy want Sonic more and more. A lot of people find Amy kind of annoying, and I can see where they're coming from, but I honestly think her relationship with Sonic adds a lot to his character. I find her very relatable and charming. She's not what I'd call my favorite character in the series or anything, but I think it's safe to say the Sonic universe wouldn't be the same without her. On to dem aesthetics. Damn, this game be sexy. Sonic 1 and 2 were pretty good looking games, but Sonic CD utterly blows them out of the water. Soak in all that color.
Fucking colors, ugh.
Check out the parallax scroll.
Oh, the fucking parallax scrolling, man.
Eyeball all the unique environments.
Fucking unique environments.
Gaze at the nifty graphical effects.
Oh, the fucking graphical effects, though, they're so nifty.
Survey that great sprite art.
Sprite art.
And complementing the great graphics is some truly exceptional art direction. The environments and locales all look so unique and memorable. How many other Sonic games can you think of with a zone like Collision Chaos, or Quartz Quadrant, or Wacky Workbench, or Stardust Speedway? Even Tidal Tempest and Metallic Madness, which are very much modeled after Labyrinth Zone and Scrap Brain Zone from Sonic 1, look wholly distinct from their Genesis predecessors. And then there's the soundtrack, or should I say, soundtracks. Indeed, depending on what region you happen to live in, your Sega CD copy will feature one of two official Red Book audio soundtracks, a Japanese European version and a North American version. I'm not quite sure how that ended up happening, a licensing issue mayhap, but both soundtracks are fucking awesome and are filled to the brim with early 90s flair. I'm not sure if I would call these tunes as memorable as those of Sonic 1 and 2, I couldn't tell you what Wacky Workbench sounds like by memory, but when it comes to instrumentation and composition, it really delivers. Part of it is just my opinion of the Genesis sound font, I guess, but when it comes to sound direction, both of Sonic CD's soundtracks are phenomenal. Most people consider the Japanese soundtrack to be the better of the two, but I find myself preferring the North American version just the slightest bit more. I'm not quite sure why that is. I guess I just find the North American tracks to fit the levels better than their Japanese equivalents. Regardless, both soundtracks are fantastic and definitely one of the highlights of Sonic CD. And if you're playing the iOS Android version, you get the best of both worlds. That's right, both the Japanese and North American soundtracks are available right from the get-go, and you can easily swap between them with the push of a button. Additionally, just like with the other remakes, Sonic CD is given the HD widescreen treatment, and it looks just as great as ever. Like its predecessors, the aesthetics in Sonic CD are pretty strong. So that brings us to DET gameplay. And right off the bat, Sonic CD has given itself an immense edge over its predecessors with the introduction of a sorely needed save feature. So that means that game overs no longer boot you back to the title screen to start over from the beginning. Thank fucking goodness. Instead, you're merely sent back to the beginning of the zone you're playing, which I think is a fair and reasonable punishment that allows the game to maintain a sufficient level of challenge without being frustrating. Like the introduction of unlimited continues in Super Mario Bros. 3, I can't tell you just how much of a massive improvement this is over the flawed difficulty balancing of the previous two Genesis games. Beating Sonic CD for the first time was nowhere near as annoying as Sonic 1 could be, and not nearly as frustrating or agonizing as Sonic 2. In fact, Sonic CD was the first classic Sonic game I ever beat, and the better difficulty balancing has left me with a stronger lasting impression of Sonic CD than its predecessors. While it took me many repeat playthroughs to grow an appreciation for Sonic 1 and 2, I've enjoyed Sonic CD since my very first playthrough. Sonic CD contains 7 zones, each with 3 acts, kind of like the first game. The third act is usually pretty short and features a boss encounter with Dr. Robotnik in one of his many mechs. And I actually think that Sonic CD has some of the most interesting boss fights in the whole series. I mean, I hate the pinball boss with a burning fucking passion, and taking out the shield robot is easier than pissing in the shower, but all the rest of them are a lot of fun to fight. My favorite is probably the Quartz Quadrant boss, which requires you to turn Robotnik's platform into molten slag by running on the conveyor belt underneath it. Look at him hot-footing it. I love it! There's certainly a nice change of pace from the boss battles of the previous games. When it comes to mechanics, it's more or less the same as last time. Sonic runs fast, he collects rings to stay alive, he can boot badniks from any angle, you can curl into a ball to gather speed, yada yada yada. He also retains the spin dash from Sonic 2, but it's been slightly gimped. In Sonic 2, all you had to do was tap the obligatory button combination and the spin dash would go off. If you wanted the spin dash to go faster and farther, you mashed the buttons to build up speed before letting go. While I still would have preferred the spin dash be given its own button, it still worked pretty well once you figured out how to use it. Since Sonic CD was developed alongside Sonic 2, the spin dash was sort of a last minute addition, and because of that it feels kind of wonky compared to Sonic 2. In Sonic CD, you use the same button combination as before, but this time you have to hold the button down until Sonic builds up enough speed. After charging up, letting go of the D-pad will make Sonic go zoom. This is a very small change, but you would not believe just how often it'll fuck you up, because every single 2D Sonic game ever besides Sonic CD has used the Sonic 2 spin dash control. I've been programmed to control Sonic in a certain way out of force of habit. When I want Sonic to spin dash, I quickly tap the down and A buttons. You can imagine what an awkward pace breaker it is for me to do this in Sonic CD, only for Sonic to stay put and go nowhere. And the spin dash seems to take longer to charge up than it should, which only serves to slow things down. No matter how many times I play Sonic CD, I can never quite get used to that. I mean, I can eventually teach myself to charge up the spin dash like I meant to, but whenever I shut the game off and come back to it later, my muscle memory defaults to the Sonic 2 control scheme. It's something I can more or less get over for the sake of enjoying this game, but it's still a quirky aspect of the Sega CD version that's always bugged me. Thankfully, the remake addresses this by allowing the player to choose between a Sonic 2 and Sonic CD styled spin dash. It may sound like a trivial addition for some, but for me, it makes the mobile version control just the slightest bit better. In addition to the spin dash, Sonic has also been given an all-new peel-out move. By holding up in the button, Sonic will run in place and take off when you release the D-pad. It's faster than the spin dash, but Sonic won't damage enemies when he uses it. But if you tap down directly after you use it, Sonic will curl into a ball anyway in a pseudo spin dash. This makes the peel out come off as kind of redundant. Most of the time I only find myself using it for the sheer hell of it. It's not hard to see why the peel out didn't return for Sonic 3 and Knuckles. If you're playing the mobile version, you can also play as Tails, who you unlock for beating the game normally. There's no Knuckles, unfortunately, but I'm not about to lose sleep over that. Also introduced in Sonic CD is a time travel mechanic, a gimmick that changes up the level design considerably from the previous two games. Each level starts off in the present, from which you can travel to a past, a bad future, and a good future version of each level. The past represents what Little Planet was like before the Doctor got there. In the present, Robotnik sends his mechs to Little Planet's surface to turn it into his official base of operations. In the bad future, he succeeds, and in the good future, Sonic is able to stop him. Each of these different time periods have a distinct look and feel, as well as a unique musical track. In terms of the sheer size and scope of the level design, Sonic CD is quite the ambitious title for its time. So, how do you travel between the time periods? Scattered throughout the acts are special signposts marked past and future. If you pass through one and then bring Sonic up to full speed and keep running, he'll begin to glow and eventually travel to that time period. And it's awkward as fuck. The majority of the level design doesn't really allow Sonic to run in a straight line long enough to activate the damn thing. And what's really annoying is that if you get interrupted by something at the very last moment, your time travel spark will go away and you'll have to find another sign and try again. Because of all this, you have to track down special corners of the level design specifically included to facilitate time travel, all the while trying not to go so fast as to accidentally lose your time travel spark. And like the special stage system in Sonic 2, this pretty much entails pittering around the entire stage like a dumbass. Thankfully, unlike Sonic 2, Sonic CD's level design is much more optimized for backtracking, and navigating between the different pathways isn't nearly as annoying. It's not like Oil Ocean Zone, where if you reached a checkpoint and you didn't have 50 rings, there was no way for you to go forward to find more rings and then come back to that checkpoint. Because of that, finding places to time travel isn't quite as annoying as trying to get into the Sonic 2 special stages. But the execution of this whole thing is still kinda clumsy. What would have been wrong with just opening sparkly rings above the time travel posts? Why do I have to keep Sonic moving at a constant speed for 20 tedious seconds? I know Sonic's all about going fast and whatnot, but at some point you gotta step back and say, was this really the best way to go about designing this? What further confounds the whole thing is that you never really need to time travel in order to finish an act. This is a mixed blessing. On one hand, if you're like me and you don't care for the time traveling, then it's completely optional and you don't have to do it at all. On the other hand, if you don't mind the time traveling and you're interested in giving it a whirl, there's not really any reason to do it unless if you're going for the good ending. And even then, there's still no reason to go to the bad or good futures, because there's nothing to do there at all. When it comes to the level design, I'm pretty mixed. Some levels, like Palm Tree Panic Zone, Quartz Quadrant Zone, and Tidal Tempest Zone are straightforward and easy to navigate. Others, like Collision Chaos Zone, feel way too complicated for their own damn good. Stardust Speedway reminds me a lot of Aquatic Ruin Zone. The way everything just sort of twists and winds around everything, it's clusterfuck design and I don't care for it. And then there's Wacky Workbench Zone. I fucking hate this level. If you touch the floor at the bottom of the level, you get bounced all the way back up to the top, making progression and navigation a complete pain in the ass, especially if you're trying to time travel. A lot of the levels in this game feel too labyrinthine, and it makes playing them kind of a chore at times. They're not bad levels, but they're still a step backward from the levels in Sonic 1 and most of Sonic 2. Again, I can appreciate that Sonic Team was trying to make levels that were more non-linear in design, but even considering that, the execution here is not that great. Sonic 1 and most of Sonic 2 kept things straightforward enough to satisfy people like me, while still having enough branching pathways to satisfy those with a greater penchant for exploration. To a certain extent, what makes for good level design is pretty subjective, but if you give Sonic CD another playthrough and compare it with the games that came before, I think you'll see what I'm getting at here. In general, I think that Sonic 1 and 2 had better level design than Sonic CD. What's here works, but it's not great. Like Sonic 1 and 2, you can fulfill certain conditions to unlock the best ending of the game. And unlike those games, you're actually given a choice as to how you want to go about doing that. Hallelujah! You can do it Sonic 1 style by going into special stages and collecting gemstones, or you can go the Sonic 2 route and be a little more exploratory. For the latter, you're tasked with tracking down and destroying Robotnik's evil roboticizer machines, which will create a good future in the first 2 acts of each zone. Doing this will lift Robotnik's influence from the area, and prevent the good doctor from having his way with the planet. While you can find these machines in the present, you'll have to destroy them in the past if you want to create a good future. So if you want to get the good ending, you'll have to travel to the past version of each act. And as I said before, this entails a lot of wankering around trying to find places to time travel. Even if you've gotten the good ending multiple times like I have, finding a past signpost and a good place to time travel still requires a lot of faffing about in the levels looking for shit. It doesn't help that all the levels are so big and tall, or that everything looks the fucking same. And I hope to Hylia you don't time travel to the future by accident. Seriously, why is travel to the future even a possibility? There's just nothing to do here. The future signs just get in the damn way. Once you've succeeded in traveling to the past, you then have to scour the level for the roboticizer itself. This part can take anywhere from a couple minutes to an eternity. In zones like Palm Tree Panic, it's in a pretty obvious spot that's easy to find. You'd be hard pressed to miss it if you're going after these things. Other times, like Wacky Workbench Act 1, they're hidden in extremely cryptic places that most players wouldn't guess in 1,000 years. How are you supposed to know that by letting this crusher thing press you against the ceiling, Sonic will fall into this tube and land right on top of the roboticizer? I'm surprised I managed to find it without looking it up online. What's worse is that you're not allowed to go back to previous acts to get the roboticizers that you missed. So if you miss one, then I'm sorry, but no good ending for you. Thankfully, the save feature will keep track of all the roboticizers you got in previous zones, so if you fuck up, you can always reset the console and try again. But that means that if you were on Act 2 of the zone, or if you managed to get a game over, you have to track down roboticizers you've already destroyed all over again. Fortunately for those playing the remake, the mobile version of Sonic CD saves the game by act, so you'll never have to worry about redoing shit you've already done. Unlike the later Sonic 1 and 2 remakes, however, you're not allowed to backtrack to previous levels after beating the game. So if you miss a roboticizer or a special stage, you still have to redo the entire game. All in all, I like that the roboticizer route gives the player an incentive to explore the level design and see what the game has to offer, but navigating around these levels is kind of a pain in the ass. And traveling to the past and finding some of these machines can take way too long. It's still marginally better than getting into the Sonic 2 special stages, because at least the level design complements exploration a little more and you don't have to collect rings, but it's not better by much. And if you really don't like finding the roboticizers, you can always try the special stage route, and in my opinion, Sonic CD's special stages are easily the best of what we looked at so far. Unlike Sonic 1 and 2, where you were trying to track down the mysterious Chaos Emeralds, Sonic CD sees the player collecting the 7 Time Stones. Collecting them all automatically makes a good feature in each act of the game, and unlocks the good ending. Unfortunately, the Time Stones won't allow Sonic to go super, which is kind of a shame. Sonic CD uses a special stage system similar to the first games. Collect 50 rings, and you'll be able to to enter a giant ring behind the Axe goalpost. While I'm still not totally in love with this system, I still prefer it to the Sonic 2 system because it keeps the game moving along and not bogged down in one level longer than necessary. Unfortunately, just like with Sonic 1, you can only enter the special stages in the first and second acts of each zone. So that means you only get a total of 14 chances to collect all 7 time stones. Luckily, the special stages themselves don't suck nearly as hard as those of the first 2 games. They're still not super fun or anything, but I still think they're a dramatic improvement over the luck-based stages in Sonic 1 and the memorization-based stages from Sonic 2. You control Sonic on a 3D plane filled with water, grass, bumpers, etc. By the way, I love all the trippy backgrounds. I'm looking at you, Special Stage 6! Your goal is to destroy these UFO-looking things before time runs out. Touching water will cause the timer to go down faster than normal, and if you hit 0, you lose. Thankfully, these blue UFOs will repeatedly pop up in the middle of the map, and destroying them will replenish your timer just a little bit. These stages are deceptively hard. For one thing, the frame rate, like the Sonic 2 special stages, is pretty choppy, so you're not given as much time to react as you'd like. Sonic's also kinda hard to steer when in midair, and the hit detection on the UFOs can also be kinda wonky. There's also no way to make Sonic stop moving and turn him toward a specific UFO. You're constantly moving at a high speed, so if you miss a UFO, you have to loop around the stage to try again. And it's a lot easier to land in the water than you might think. The water is everywhere. Because UFOs like to swerve around a lot when you're trying to jump into them, you'll often have to aim yourself toward the water to stand any chance of hitting them. When you can get past all of that, these special stages really aren't that bad. They're much more forgiving than before, especially considering the blue UFOs, and they're almost kind of fun to play. Ultimately, when it comes to getting the good ending, your choice comes down to this. Do you want to blaze into the special stages but run the risk of losing them too many times? Or do you want to steadily but surely track down all the roboticizers but slow the game down to a crawl? Frankly, neither option makes for a very fun side quest, especially seeing as the good ending really isn't worth the effort. Regardless, both routes are improvements over Sonic 1 and 2, and I'm thankful that I'm at least allowed to pick my poison this time around. And as before, getting the good ending is completely optional. If you don't want the hassle of traveling to the past or collecting 50 rings and entering the special stages, you don't have to do it. And frankly, that's what I'd recommend, because while the special stage and roboticizer systems may be improvements over Sonic 1 and 2, neither of them are a particularly fun use of your time. Now it's time to talk about the endgame. So, spoiler section!
Ah, spoiler alert!
Sonic chases down his robotic doppelganger to Stardust Speedway, where the two engage in a death race to see who can reach Amy first. Dr. Robotnik, in the meanwhile, trails behind with an instant kill death laser. Why didn't he use that before? The Metal Sonic race is definitely one of the highlights of Sonic CD, and another instance of Sonic CD's creative boss design. Everyone who's played this game remembers this part, and for good reason. After rescuing Amy from the clutches of Metal Sonic, the blue blur makes his way to Robotnik's base of operations, Metallic Madness Zone. Fuck this level, fuck this level, fuck this level, fuck this level,
Fuck this level!
Labyrinth Zone was slow, Metropolis Zone was frustrating and tedious, but Metallic Madness Zone is easily the worst zone in any classic Sonic game. Why? Because it's a fucking maze. Everything looks the goddamn same. There are annoying enemies and stage hazards everywhere, and getting around is just a pain in the gonads. I especially hate these stupid tube things. Which way's the correct way? You'll never know. You just have to pick a path and hope for the best. And if you're going for the roboticizers, this level just got that much more tedious and frustrating to navigate. Seriously, I dare you to try to find the roboticizer in Act 2 without whipping out a guide. When I LP'd this game for Game Mavericks, we must have spent an entire half hour looking for the damn thing.
You've gone in this same hole like 18 times.
I know, but where the hell am I supposed to go?
Go right.
Been able to find it.
I went right the
Like
last time.
Go up and then right. Jump to the right.
I mean, so do you guys kind of see what I meant when I said that the level design I'm kind of ambivalent on?
Yeah, it's very
how
interesting.
How it gets a little too mazy, you know?
You're like a rat in a trap.
Fuck! Oh, come on! No!
That is unfortunate.
You guys know what that means, right?
What does that mean?
It means we have to find the roboticizers for those two levels all over again. And speaking of which, this level brings back Sonic 2 bullshit deaths in full force. I must have gotten at least 3 crush deaths in this level just trying to get around. In Metallic Madness, Act 3 is the only level in the game to feature bottomless pits. And you know how much I like those in my 2D Sonic. And it's such a pain in the ass to avoid falling in, too, seeing as you're suspended above the pit on these twirly platform things. It's so easy to fall through them, get a game over, and then get sent back to the beginning of the zone. And trust me, you really don't want that to happen, because playing through the zone once is tedious enough.
So what you want to do here is be careful with the spinning platform part. Fuck! No! 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 God, damn it! Oh, son of a fucking bitch!
Thankfully, as bad as these levels are, the final boss is a significant improvement over Sonic 2's. For one thing, you get rings. Huzzah! I can't believe it took Classic Sonic Team 3 games to figure that out, but I'm not complaining. And defeating the boss is relatively straightforward too. Just boop him 8 times and you win, complete with another kick-ass FMV cutscene. If you fail to make a good future in each zone, Robotnik will fly off with the time stones, to which Sonic replies by knocking him out of the sky with a rock. Damn, Sonic's got quite the throwing arm, if I do say so myself. The good ending's pretty much the same thing, except this time Little Planet farts out a bunch of pixie dust and explodes. How is that a good thing exactly? It's really not worth it. So, Remake or Rebreak. How does the Taxman and Stealth remake of Sonic CD stack up with the Sega CD original? The iOS Android version is a solid remake. Sonic 1 and 2 had some bumps in the experience that the remake smoothed over with the addition of a save feature and a widescreen aspect ratio. But because Sonic CD doesn't suffer from the same visibility and difficulty balancing problems, there wasn't quite as much for the remake to improve upon. That being said, I do still think the mobile version is slightly better than the original. It brings back everything that was great about the original, the excellent graphics, the amazing music, and the creative bosses. It also introduces a fully playable Tails, fixes the spin dash to make it more like Sonic 2, improves the quality of the cutscenes, updates the save feature to save by act, and allows you to choose between the Japanese and North American soundtracks. Considering the sheer rarity and steep price of the original Sega CD game, you're best off playing the Taxman and Stealth version, which is not only cheaper, but also available for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. As for my opinion of Sonic CD as a game, like with Sonic 2, I feel kinda mixed about it. On one hand, the graphics are excellent, the art direction is creative and original, the sound is top-notch, and the bosses are interesting and fun to take on. And because of the save feature, the difficulty balancing is much better than Sonic 1, and especially Sonic 2. I also think the special stage system is an improvement over the previous 2 games. But when it comes to level design, arguably the most important part of any platforming game, Sonic CD doesn't hold a candle to its predecessors. A few of the zones are pretty fun, but Collision Chaos has too much going on, Wacky Workbench's bouncy floor is a pain in the ass, Stardust Speedway is a clusterfuck, and Metallic Madness is just tedious and not fun to play at all. But seeing as everything else in the game besides the level design is mostly pretty strong, I can still enjoy Sonic CD quite a bit as it is. And if you ignore the time travel and the special stages and just play the game like normal, what you have left is still a pretty good Sonic game, all things considered. Sonic CD is not a bad game in the slightest. It's got a lot of good elements. I just don't think the level design is especially great. If you haven't played Sonic CD for whatever reason, I'd say it's worth checking out. Is it the best Sonic game ever made? Not in my personal opinion, but that doesn't mean I dislike it either. Regardless, I still think the iOS Android version of Sonic 1 is the best classic Sonic game we've looked at so far, followed closely by the iOS Android version of Sonic 2. And that more or less covers my thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog CD. So what's next? Well, even though Sega hasn't yet given the green light on a Taxman and Stealth remaster of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, I'm not sure why, I'm gonna give the game the full review treatment anyway. I mean, I reviewed the other games, so I might as well. And we're in for a real treat, folks, because Sonic 3 and Knuckles is easily the best game in the classic series, and I'm excited to play it. Until next time, gentles and ladiesmen, I'm ExoParadigmGamer, and I hope you enjoyed the review.
Your son
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here.
It's clearly Japanese.